In today's episode, the base model Ford Sierra. Hello and welcome to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel. A channel that's here on YouTube looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and sometimes beyond that. So maybe watch a bit of the show, consider subscribing, it is all completely free. Anyway, today, while we usually look at Fords on a Friday, that's a kind of like something we've done for quite some time now. Today's no exception, although we usually look at a range of cars. So for example, we'll look at a Ford Escort, see how that particular range ran in a particular year. We're going to do something slightly different. We're just going to pick one spec model today. The very austere Ford Sierra base model, yes, when it just came with that black nose. Always intrigued me, basic, the real bog standard models of any make or model of car, but for me, this is probably my favourite of those base models because, wow, it really shouted out, I am the base model, you should have tried harder. Anyway, let's throw it on the board, have a look at this brochure. So here it is, the base model Sierra, or what they called it then, the Sierra Saloon, the model that wasn't even an L model. And they really shouted about it at launch by not even painting the front end. Now, I've always, like I said, had an interest with base model cars, and I don't know why really. Certainly when I was younger, I was more interested in the top of the range gears, etc. But I guess these were the cars you actually saw more of, so maybe it's more of a sort of historic thing for me. You more likely saw like an L model or a very lowly spec model around where I lived anyway, so maybe it's due to that. But like I say, it's not just here in the 80s when Ford was shouting about you buying a base model. They've been doing it for years. I'll just throw you an example on this particular brochure from 75 where they're trying to sell you the new Ford Escort Popular, the very base model car. And I guess to some extent they really shouted about this being your base poverty spec car. You could have of course moved up to a Popular Plus. I think when you walked in the showroom, maybe the Popular wasn't even in the showroom, I don't know, or maybe tucked away in the corner. I think it was the salesman's job to really talk you out of buying that base model, possibly moving into a Popular Plus, or heaven forbid, move you up to the L model. But if you did insist on getting your base model, of course you could do. You did see a few of them running around, of course. Really Ford's way of saying the Escort range starts at always seemed better value for money, and in fact in small print here it says Ford value for money starts here. So really the introduction, I can just about afford to buy this base model rather than buying a used car. Like I said, I'm sure some people insisted on buying that Popular because they really counted the pennies, but when you drove it home, I mean, it really shouted out, you must try harder. I think that was kind of like Ford's ploy. And like I say, it didn't really end in the 80s, did it, when they brought out the radical Sierra, a huge move away from the Cortina, of course. And of course the Cortina themselves had a very base model too, and I might as well use this 75 brochure as an example as I've got it out of, although of course this is a Mark III Cortina. There was more generations after this than of course when the Sierra arrived, but still not even the L model, looking very basic with the round front headlights, and we can see this is just a two-door example. So yes, they've always liked to look at it as value for money, and in fact all these brochures talking about value for money. 75, oil crisis, I don't think we all had very much money to spend, so these cars were there to tempt you into a brand new car when you've probably been buying used cars all your life. But if you did walk away with the base model, it looked very base. So yes, anyway, enough waffle, let's move on to today's show. So we're looking at that base model Ford Sierra, a car that really Ford has never really shouted so much that you've picked the base model and you should be trying harder. I mean, how much extra was it to, as Midnight gives us a visit? Thank you, Midnight, put your tail down. Yeah, Ford has never really shouted so much that you really bought a base level car. How much extra would it have been just to paint that front nose? Obviously there isn't just the front nose that makes this a base car. It's very basic in all elements you could think of, but you can see that black nose from an awful long way away, and I've always been quite fascinated with that. Didn't actually last as long as you think. I mean, it wasn't there throughout the pre-facelifted Sierras. It was dropped much earlier, although I'm struggling to find the exact date when that was there. If you do know the exact dates, please jot in the comments, because even though I'm fascinated by these, I've never really found anywhere that actually tells you the exact dates. It was only for a couple of years, I do believe. Anyway, a couple of brochures here. I've got probably one of my favourite Ford all-range brochures, May 1983, which it's showing that in that. And also this is a Pacific brochure for the launch of the Sierra. I think there was an earlier one than this, but this is a very early brochure for the Ford Sierra launch. The new Ford Sierra, man and machine in perfect harmony. Interestingly, looks like we do get a price list, which we'll peep at as well, but we're only concentrating on that base model. In fact, if you read a lot of literature in the internet, it'll actually tell you that black face, that black nose was actually dropped at the facelift. It wasn't, it was dropped much earlier than that. But yes, we'll have a look at some of the text here to show you how basic it was, because it wasn't all about that just unpainted nose, of course. And then we'll come back to these images, and then we'll look at the next brochure as well. So it tells us, although this is the least expensive Sierra, it's still remarkably well equipped. A driver's car through and through. It's available with even a 1.3 or 1.6 engines, which gives it very lively performance. So imagine picking that 1.3. Alternatively, you could order the diesel engine for even less speed. The 5-speed gearbox is optional on the 1.6 though, if you wanted something a little bit nicer on the motorways, but 1.3 4-speed gearbox would have been quite a miserable affair really. From outside you'll recognise it by its special wheels and different grille and bumper treatments. The whole nose section is dark grey, while inside you'll find fully reclining front seats, generous storage bins and built-in armrests on the front doors, and the back seat folds flat in one piece. Then tells us the car illustrated is a Sierra 5-door saloon in cardinal red. Option fitted at extra cost is the A-frame head restraints. We'll come to that in a moment. So the engine, so a 1300 OHC or 1600 OHC petrol engine with electronic brakeless ignition, viscous coupling cooling fan and single variable Venturi carburetor with automatic choke, or the 2300 diesel with electromagnetically clutched cooling fan, indirect injection and pre-warm glow plugs. So these were still rear wheel drive vehicles, making them a front wheel drive was always seen as a step too far. So I think there was already a little bit worried about how people would feel after the very square Cortina. So we get a 4-speed manual gearbox with the petrol engines, 5-speed manual gearbox with the 2.3 litre diesel engine, synchromesh on all gears, auto and 5-speed manual gearbox is optional at extra cost on the 1.6 engine only. Remote floor mounted gear shift, cable operated self-adjusting single plate diaphragm spring clutch, straight drive line. Suspension and steering, rack and pinion steering with safety steering column and anti-theft lock. 2-spoke steering wheel, turning circle between curbs of 32.8 feet or 10 meters. Fully independent front and rear suspension, front independent McPherson struts with coil springs, rearward mounted stabilizer bar, rear independent semi-trailing arm, coil spring system mounted on an insulated subframe, twin tube shock absorbers. The brakes are front rear split hydraulic circuit with vacuum servo assistance, G valve sensor and brake fluid loss warning device. Front fine-tuned 9.4 disc with 1.3 and 1.6 litre engines, ventilated with all other engine sizes. Rear 8.8 by 1.4 drums with 1.3 and 1.6 litre saloons only, 9 by 2.2 drums for all other models. Handbrake, self-adjusting, cable operated, floor mounted brake, operating on rear drums. Gives you an idea what the wheels and tyres were for this base model. So 165 SR by 13 radial ply tyres on 13 by 4.5 rim style steel road wheels. Lighting and electrical, 12 volt negative earth system, tungsten semi-sealed beam rectangular headlights, horn, direction indicators and side repeaters, reversing lights, hazard warning lights, pre-engaged starter, heated rear window, integral rear fog lamps, 45 amp alternator on petrol model, 55 amp alternator on the 2.3 litre diesel, 35 amp hour battery, 88 amp hour on 2.3 litre diesel. The body is an all-steel welded integral construction, wind tunnel developed for low drag coefficient, comprehensive multi-stage corrosion protection, including special wax injection to cavities and PVC coating to critical stone chip areas. The underbody is sealed to resist salt spray. Hatchback 4-door with anti-burst door locks with child-proof locks on rear doors. Push-button tailgate lock. Spare wheel housed inside boot area under load platform. 13.2 gallon 60 litre fuel tank with locking cap. Damage resistant moulding or moulded. Grey plastic bumpers front and rear with bright mylar. Grey plastic free vent front grille, direct glazed laminated windscreen, rear side windows with heated rear window, 2-speed wipers with flick wipe, electric screen washers, driver's door mirror front and rear towing hooks, effective luggage capacity of 24.4 cubic feet as a 5-seater or 12.5 cubic feet with the package tray in place. 51.7 cubic feet as a 2-seater. Interior, Windsor fabric trimmed reclining front seats with adjustment forward and backwards. Contoured bench rear seat with security locks. Folds forward to give a flat load area of 62 or 70 max. Load length as a 2-seater, 37 as a 5-seater. 37 between wheel arches, carpet in passenger compartments. Inertia reel front seat belts with reels concealed on centre door pillars and seatbelt buckles mounted on the seat frame. Handbrake with gaiter, front tricky trays, incorporating gear shifter with gaiter. Cloth covered headlining, free grab handles, day-night dipping rear view mirror, 2 swivelling sun visors. In fact, it wouldn't have been that long ago with the base models only had 1 sun visor on some of the early Fords. Anyway, full width soft feel fascia pad with integral passenger side and centre storage boxes with 4 independently adjustable face level vents and side window demist vents. Passenger side glove box with lid, lower driver side stowage, ashtray in lower centre fascia, a stratified heating system with illuminated controls and free speed booster fan. Free level fingertip control systems for indicators, main and dip beam, headlamp flasher, horn, headlight and side light control, windscreen wipers and electric wash. Speedometer and odometer, trip meter, fuel gauge and temperature gauge, warning lights with direction indicators, handbrake, brake fluid level, main beam ignition, oil pressure and seatbelt reminder, illuminated switches for heated rear window and rear fog lamps, hazard warning light switch mounted on the steering column, moulded door trim including integral armrest and door pulls and front door bins, door release and lock button, tilting moulded rear package tray, luggage compartment carpet, front door operated front courtesy light. So a pretty austere spec list really, although if of course we compared it with the Fords in 1975 it's actually well equipped, but that's always how it goes, isn't it? Anyway, we'll look at these images and we'll finish on this large image. So here is the image of it from the rear, looking very austere. I think the thing that's striking about this and really shouts out is that it's got no rear wash wipe, although that you'd think today, oh wow, that's because it's a base model, but actually on launch none of the models, none of the hatchback models came with a rear wash wipe. The Estates did, but these hatchbacks didn't. Even the Gear didn't come with a rear wash wipe. There was all options. So yes, you could option it on all models including this base model, but like I say, not standard on any, which is surprising, particularly as I don't think I've ever seen a Gear model without a rear wash wipe, and I can only think that dealers spec'd them with that rear wash wipe because people expected it to be on the top model. Not sure about that one. We can also see some very austere wheels, which we'll have a closer look at. Yes, nothing special about that, is it? And nothing special about the interior either. It's really spot how many blanking plugs we can find, including a huge blanking plug for the radio. We don't get a radio as standard. No rev counter. And the thing that really shouts out that this is a base model, look at that door card. It is horrendous. Looks like just a grey plastic bin attached to the door there. There's no carpeting to be seen. That looks extremely austere. And then we've got those real austere dangly rear view mirrors for the base models. And there is a close-up of that dangly mirror. Basically what we're saying here is not a remote control mirror, you just have to wind your window down and adjust it by hand. But unusual design. Another thing that really stood out to me as being on the base model cars that were something that was eventually dropped, but you know, we see this. I think the L's got this as well, you know, so it's nothing special. We can also just about make out the head restraints, which was not standard on this model. Yes, that safety piece of equipment wasn't mandatory in the UK at this time, so if you didn't ask for it, you didn't get it on your base model. Of course, the base model is all about that front end, though. That's you can spot it from such a long way about it. It really is shouting out that this is a base model. Now I'm sure a lot of these went as like company vehicles or fleet vehicles, buy a load of them, base models. It makes sense, doesn't it? I wonder how many of these was actually sold to private owners. I think most of them wouldn't have survived because they would have had a really hard life, but there is still a few. I've seen a few pictures of them running around in the UK. They're now a little bit collectible, so they are being saved. So I wonder if some of them were indeed in private ownership. I don't know, you would have had to be quite a brave man, or very penny pinching at least. We can even see that sort of fuel cap. No cap on there, it's not even colour coordinated, is it? No bright work around those side windows either, is there? But that was always a very much a Ford trick going back a long way, to put the bright work on your higher spec models. So here it is, the Sierra price list for that period. So that very base black or grey nosed Ford Sierra 1300 was £4,782. If you wanted the 1600 version of that base model, £5,070. £5,470 if you wanted the diesel, but that was a bit of an unusual choice. You would have really needed a diesel to choose that one. In comparison, like I say, your 1300 base model was £4,782. If you moved up to the 1300L, which certainly looks a lot nicer on the outside. £5,234.30. So I'm sure a lot of the salesmen really tried to talk you into moving at least to that L model, but it certainly was a little bit of a jump up if you was counting those pennies. Of course, if you was a fleet manager, it makes sense buying the base model if you're buying like 10 of them. Incidentally, that base 1300 Sierra was roughly the same price as a Ford Escort 1300 L 5-door, so you can see that comparison there. Just move up one model up and it's a whole new world. We still get that sort of slotted grille for the lower spec models, but at least it's painted now. We've got wheel trims now, although we still have that dangly mirror on there. But like I said, I'm sure most private owners would have been steered onto the L and been a lot happier. We would have had to gone all the way up to a gear though to get that sort of more familiar smooth nose to match that sort of aerodynamic look that the Sierra had. And of course the bumper is different with these side lights in the bumper there. So this brochure is dated October 82, but if we move into a full range brochure now for May 1983, we can see we've still got the base model with that black or grey grille as they call it, that sort of Zorro look I always call them, is still here in this full range brochure. Tells us at the top there, Sierra Saloon, economy, efficiency, the hallmarks of this Sierra are personified in the saloon, which offers free petrol engines and a diesel, so free petrol engines. And before we get too excited, no, that means we can't get a 2 litre unfortunately. We can get a 1.3, a 1.6 and something they're referring to as the 1.6 economy engines, all as standard choices by looks of it. Coming as standard with a 4-speed gearbox still, and then the 5-speed optional on the 1.6. So essentially what that's telling us is a 4-speed on the 1.3 and the 1.6, and then the 1.6 economy and 2.3 diesel coming with the 5-speed. It tells us are designed especially for drivers who want to make economy a priority. Both come with a 5-speed gearbox with the 1.6 bettering 51 miles per gallon and the diesel topping 55. Not sure it would have been worth going for that noisy diesel. The 5-speed gearbox can be specified as an option on the standard 1.6 and improves fuel consumption by 3 miles per gallon. Another glimpse on that austere interior, all of the grey. The main image though showing us how it came as standard, i.e. we don't get those A-frame headrests. They're not appearing here. So yeah, optional extra for those A-frame headrests. Front end remains the same though, with that grey unpainted nose. It looks black here, but they always refer to it as grey. I think we should be thankful we get this little bit of a bright insert though. Moving on not too much further with our next brochure. This one's dated December 84. So the base model now, the base model doesn't look vastly different. It's referring to it as the Sierra Saloon, economical and efficient. The spacious saloon sets the tone for the rest of the Sierra family. So at first glance it doesn't look any different, although we'll notice the interior picture is showing those A-frame headrests now, but the difference is these are no longer an optional extra, they are standard. Hurrah! So we do get something extra. Badging at the back is showing this is a Sierra 1.6, still no rear wash wipe you'll notice, but we are getting sort of these rubbing strips now where before we didn't. And if I just pull back the camera, the disappointing thing about this image really for this one is it's not showing the front end. So does it have the unpainted grey nose, or have we changed? Well, we have to look at the text to find that out. And in the text it tells the 5-door hatchback has a smart body coloured grille. So already here in this particular brochure we've lost that grey unpainted nose. So despite what you'll find on the internet, it really didn't last very long at all, so making it quite a rare car today. So does that mean that Ford decided to blend the base model in with the rest of the range and not point and laugh at you? Well, yes and no. The problem is, yes, they painted the front end, but by this time your L model came with that nice gear style smooth nose, so really it did stand out, but in a different way than it originally did. And then finally, this final brochure I'll just show you a couple of pictures of. This is March 1986. And here is your base model showing its new painted nose. I'm just wondering, with that last brochure we looked at, it didn't show the nose. I wonder if that was actually an older model that still had that unpainted nose. I'm not sure about that, but it's unusual they didn't show it off. And rather nicely, actually, this is parked next to, or the image next to it is of the L model. So like I say, they were kind of like, even though they was painting that front nose now, they were still showing that that was a base model by having that sort of slotted grille in there. But there you go. I hope you've enjoyed our little journey looking at the base model Ford Sierra. So that grey nose didn't last through the full generation. It was axed pretty soon. I guess I'll have to get every single month Ford brochures to find the exact month that actually changed over. But like I say, it didn't last very long, did it? Any memories of the Ford Sierra, in particular your base model? Please jot in the comments. Always very interesting to hear and of course learn more from all you very knowledgeable viewers out there. We'll end as we always do by saying, just ending to say, please, if you've enjoyed the episode, please do consider subscribing. It is all completely free. Very grateful when you do that. Of course, keeps you in touch with the channel. Like I say, you would never be charged for that, so click that subscribe button now. Don't forget to, of course, like the video, and we'll see you very soon. I'll add a couple of boxes here for other videos you might want to continue viewing, but overall ending by saying thank you so much for watching today. Please do take care. We'll see you again very soon. All the best and goodbye.